Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's deep dive event offered through NOAA Ocean Exploration and the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute and supported by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. For today's program, we've got registrants from far and wide, so we're going to ask that you please say hello in the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from. So during tonight's event, we're going to take a dive into maritime heritage, or more specifically, marine archaeology. And the study of marine archaeology opens fascinating windows into the past. It improves our understanding of the ocean, of the history of human interaction with the ocean, and reminds us and broadens our understanding of our collective past. Archaeology, whether on land or underwater, is simply defined as the science of learning about past human behavior by examining the physical remains left behind by people of the past. And the story of water, people, and the interrelationship between the two is all around us. Underwater archaeological sites most notably include shipwrecks, like this Japanese World War II cargo ship that was found in the Pacific, or this 19th century copper-clad cargo vessel that was found in the Gulf of Mexico, or this sunken schooner barge that was found in the depths of the Great Lakes. However, they also include sunken planes, and sunken submarines, and paleo landscapes, meaning currently submerged regions like those you see here off the coast of California that can provide information on historic human migration and climate fluctuations. These sites and their associated artifacts, like these amphora, or this iron stove, or this cannon, provide tangible links to our collective human history and our glimpses into our social, our economic, and our cultural evolution. All maritime heritage sites are like time capsules, preserving a single moment or a period of time. And by studying them, we can remember and better understand the past, inform the present, and in some cases, provide healing and restoration. And while archaeological research and exploration is teaching us a lot about how ships, planes, and submarines have influenced the course of human history, scientists are also learning how these sunken structures influence ecology in the deep marine environment, from the transfer of organisms from one body of water to another as vessels travel from one sea to another, to serving as places where marine life can colonize and thrive. Fully exploring our cultural heritage on land and under the ocean informs our future and impacts smart decision-making about these special and sometimes sacred places. Part of our goal today is to help make the connection between the science and the culture. We can't explore these places without the science, but once we see them, oftentimes there are incredible stories behind them. I'm Susan Haynes with NOAA Ocean Exploration, and I am joined tonight by my colleague, Sarita Nanez-James. Sarita, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarita Nanez-James. I'm an education lead here at NOAA Ocean Exploration, and I'll be sharing some resources with everyone tonight. Thanks, Susan.
Terrific, Sarita. Glad to have you with us tonight, and we'll see you in just a little while. So to start our deep dive with our visiting experts and give them a sense of your interests, we'd like to ask our audience, everybody online, to answer this question using a Mentimeter code. So to provide your answer, please go to menti.com and input the voting code, or you can scan the QR code that's here on the screen with your phone, and you'll be sent directly to the interactive poll. Or you can also use the direct link that's posted in the YouTube description. So our question tonight is, what topics related to marine archaeology are you most interested in learning about tonight? And you can select all that apply here, any of the ones that pertain to things that you're interested in, to give our experts a sense of the course of our conversation tonight. So while you're answering that question, our plan for tonight is to spend about 50 to 60 minutes directly with our visiting maritime heritage experts, providing time for you all to dig into the topic, no pun intended, and to ask your burning questions. And we'll then briefly share a few of the fantastic education resources we have available to bring this topic into classroom instructions, and also mention some of our professional development opportunities. So tonight we've welcomed educators and we've also welcomed students and the general public to this event. But for educators, while this learning opportunity is a bit different from our annual educator professional development opportunities, we're certain you're going to gain some great knowledge that can support your teaching in the classroom, whether you're teaching science, whether you're teaching history, social studies, or several other subjects, because as we'll learn tonight, maritime heritage and marine archaeology is very much an interdisciplinary subject. So thanks for saying hello in the chat. And I'm going to take a look at where some of our folks are joining from. We've got folks from North Carolina and Florida and Connecticut, South Carolina. And please continue to say hello in the chat. We're looking forward to talking with all of you. Fantastic. So welcome to everyone, and thank you for letting us know your interests this evening. Can we go ahead and pull the Mentimeter up on the screen and take a look at what folks had to say? Great, so we've got a variety of interests here. Looks like some folks are interested in the most innovative tools, which we'll definitely talk about tonight. We'll definitely be talking about our experts' experiences in maritime archaeology and current explorations. We'll be talking a bit about resources, and also we'll probably be tapping into a number of different careers associated with maritime heritage. So thank you all very much for answering that Mentimeter poll. And with that, tonight I am so excited to be joined by Dr. Ayana Flewellen from Stanford University and Phil Hartmeyer from NOAA Ocean Exploration and UCAR, who will not only answer your burning questions, but also help us to highlight some of the most interesting aspects of marine archaeology today. So Dr. Ayana Flewellen, she is an assistant professor of anthropology at Stanford University in California. She has a PhD in anthropology from the University of Texas at Austin and a master's degree in African diaspora studies, meaning the dispersal from one's homeland. And that is also from the University of Texas at Austin. Ayana's research areas include anthropology, archaeology, visual and performing arts, colonialism, and African diaspora studies. Her fields of interest include historical archaeology, maritime heritage conservation, public community engaged archaeology, processes of identity formation, and memory and representations of slavery. Ayana is a Black feminist, an archaeologist, an artist, scholar, and a storyteller. As a scholar of anthropology for African diaspora studies, she advocates for greater diversity within the field of archaeology and within the broader scope of academia. Ayana is the co-founder and current board chair of the Society of Black Archaeologists and sits on the board of a program called Diving with a Purpose, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about today. She's been featured in National Geographic, Science Magazine, Junior Scholastic, Discovery Channel, PBS, and CNN, and she regularly presents her work at institutions including the National Museum for Women in the Arts and the National Nordic Museum. And Phil Hartmeyer joining us tonight is a marine archaeologist at the NOAA Office of Ocean Exploration, contracted through the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research. And Phil has a master's degree in maritime studies and maritime archaeology from East Carolina University and a bachelor's degree in anthropology and archaeology from St. Mary's College of California. And Phil spent 10 years working at NOAA's Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in the Great Lakes as a maritime archaeologist and also as a unit diving supervisor and as an educator. He's supported and led archaeological expeditions around the world, including recent efforts to document previously unexplored aircraft carriers from the Battle of Midway in the Pacific, and currently works to coordinate, innovate, and increase the amount, benefit, and meaning of underwater cultural heritage research, protection, and education efforts at NOAA Ocean Exploration. So all of that was a mouthful, guys. Ayana and Phil, please come on screen. There you are. Welcome. Having you guys here with us tonight provides an absolute exceptional opportunity for us to learn more about maritime heritage. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. Excited for the conversation.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Great, great. So before we get into our interview with the two of you, we're going to ask our audience one more question that is sort of a tricky question that we'll answer later in our conversations. So if we can bring up this question, we're going to show you an image and ask you what you think the things are that are hanging off the stern of this particular shipwreck. So take a look at those items that are hanging off the front of that shipwreck. Answers could be orange sponges, could be melted metal, and could be rust. So take a moment to answer that in the Mentimeter, and we'll come back to that a little later. But while you're working on that, just a point to ask you all to drop your questions into the chat box throughout the evening and ask as many questions as you'd like to along the way. We have folks behind the scenes who are monitoring those questions, and we'll try to cover as many as we can in the next 50 or so minutes. So while we're waiting for questions to roll in, I've got a few questions just to get us started here. Ayana and Phil, let's start with just sort of a broad perspective of your work to get to know the two of you a little bit better. I know each of you clearly comes to maritime heritage from different perspectives. So can I ask you each to briefly share your specific focus on the topic? And why don't we start with you, Phil?
Sure. Thanks, Susan. And, I love archaeology for many reasons, and its bonding, connective ability to bring folks together is one of the best parts. So this conversation is an incredible opportunity for Ayana, myself, and others. So thanks for having us. For me, my focus currently is on federal historic preservation efforts designed to really maximize efficiencies and rate of return on marine archaeological efforts executed by NOAA Ocean Exploration. This is done internally, this is done externally through projects our office funds, and really contributing to larger underwater cultural heritage communities, priorities, drivers, and direction, all while working towards a more inclusive, multidimensional future for the discipline and utilizing the resources at hand at NOAA Ocean Exploration and NOAA at large to push all those areas. Partnerships are an immense part of that portfolio, interagency, but also outside of government, and working and understanding different priorities, assets, opportunities, and interests across the UCH space is a big part of what we do, and a big part of my focus. Understanding the landscape, synergizing different avenues to push our understanding of the past is really what makes me tick. Our office is regularly providing funding and expertise and opportunities for students and the public to execute these mutually beneficial missions that help us grow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Phil. How about you, Ayana?
Yeah, so my interest in really start with maritime heritage began with an organization called Diving with a Purpose that was founded in 2003. And Diving with a Purpose, it's a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to oceanic conservation and preservation of submerged heritage resources. And there are two kind of main branches that operate within DWP, and I'll be saying DWP to reference Diving with a Purpose during our time together. And we do a lot around coral restoration with the CARES program, and then we also do a maritime advocacy program where we're working in partnership with NOAA. And then for our youth Diving with a Purpose program, we work in partnership with the National Park Service to support in the documentation of submerged heritage resources that are in water surrounding Key Biscayne, which is really exciting. So I'm actually going down there in June of this year, so in about 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's kind of wild that summer is already here. But Diving with a Purpose approached me and a colleague of mine, Justin Donavant, because we were the co-founders, and at the time he was the president and I was the vice president of an organization that we started called the Society of Black Archaeologists, which is an organization primarily comprised of archaeologists of African descent, but we include in our membership base is filled with archaeologists who do work on terrestrial sites pertaining to the African diaspora, so pertaining to Black experiences around the world. And Diving with a Purpose was really excited to hopefully train archaeologists who had done terrestrial work, like myself, to do maritime work. And I had no idea about the kind of access, opportunities, job prospects that maritime archaeology was available to me, honestly. And I think part of that is in my PhD program at the University of Texas at Austin, maritime archaeology wasn't a core part of our educational programming or curriculum. We have the Society of Historical Archaeology meeting and an underwater archaeology meeting happen simultaneously within that. And rarely are those conversations crossing within each other at those spaces. So it wasn't until this organization, Diving with a Purpose, that's primarily comprised of recreational scuba divers who are doing citizen scientist work with organizations like NOAA, the Smithsonian, the National Park Service, outside of academia, that actually provided a pathway for scholars like myself to really see ourselves in this field. So through Diving with a Purpose, I was introduced to the amazing amount of history submerged in our waters. And since working with them, I've been able to support work on the Tuskegee Airmen Project, but I can speak to the Catilda Project since I see the point on the board, which was the very first ship that I actually was able to support surveying, which was the Catilda. And the Catilda is the last known vessel to carry enslaved Africans into the United States. And the last known meaning that it was the last one that was documented, and that was in Mobile, Alabama, working alongside the Texas Historical Commission and a really wonderful cultural research management firm named Search that really led these phenomenal efforts. So you see us actually sifting through some of the dredging work that was happening, which is what that tube is connected to, looking to see if there were any artifacts that could be recovered from that site. And I've also been able to work through Diving with a Purpose, supporting the commemoration of the Tuskegee Airmen Project in NOAA's Thunder Bay waters in the Great Lakes, which has been absolutely phenomenal. And we're talking about phenomenal like Bell P-39 era Cobra that was in Lake Huron. And it actually crashed in this lake due to a training exercise accident that occurred in 1944 when Lieutenant Frank Moody lost his life in that accident. And we were able to actually support Wayne Lasardi, who's the PI on that project, document that site, and also pull in community from the Port Huron area to support the commemoration of that history and heritage around the Tuskegee Airmen in Michigan, which was fantastic. So my mind has been blown wide open, and part of the work that I do now, as Susan mentioned, with maritime conservation work is really trying to figure out how we can bring these histories closer to communities who have been historically excluded from our waterways, historically denied access to these waterways that have this history in it. So that's a core part of the work that I do. So yeah, thank you so much.
That's fantastic, Ayana. Such important and powerful work that you're doing. I'm curious, we were talking to a certain extent during some of our pre-interviews and preparation about slave ships and slave wrecks.
Yeah.
How many slave wrecks have actually been discovered? Wrecks of slaves that never made it to where they were being taken?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the numbers are actually quite astonishing. So if you think about, and this data comes from the Slave Voyages database, which slavevoyages.org, I believe, can actually locate you to the numbers themselves. But just over 36,000 ships actually made 36,000 voyages took place across the Atlantic during the Middle Passage, right? During the transatlantic slave trade. And about 12,000 ships were created to do those voyages. Of those 12,000 ships, about 1,000 of them never actually reached their destination or in are potential sites of interest for archaeologists like myself that document this rather traumatic aspect of world history in many ways. And of the ships that have been found, less than 10 literally have actually been documented, surveyed in some regard. So there's so much more of this history that can be accounted for. And of the ships that have been documented, the Clotilda in Mobile, Alabama, once again, this project underneath the Alabama Historic Commission in a deep partnership with Search, the Clotilda ship is the only known vessel that actually has an intact hull, which is where enslaved Africans would have been held during the Middle Passage. So during that horrific experience across the Atlantic that brought them to what was then called the Americas. So the history, the rich history is once again so valuable to world history. And there's so much more of it to be documented and recovered, which is why in earlier conversations with Phil talking about the fantastic technology that's being implemented to document the seafloor, so much of our history, not just of this experience, but world history is going to be, brought to the public in really exciting ways.
Absolutely. So many important stories to be told and yet to be told. Phil, those are two examples of some of the work that Ayana's been doing. Do you want to share a specific example of like one of the projects that you've been working on recently or in the past?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, why don't we bring up the Battle of Midway if we could, Jess? This is an important project for many reasons, and I think has strong connection with meaning that Ayana was sharing, and the importance of locating Clotilda, places like Clotilda, with incredibly tragic and dark pasts, sites of war, draw out sort of similar kind of conflicted emotions of past history that now are really riddled in stories of healing, of presence, and planning for the future. And the Battle of Midway, of course, was a pivotal engagement in the Second World War in the Pacific Theater. And one says, as enemies at war, Japan and the United States, in September of this past year, and much earlier from then, have reconnected as close, very close allies and as collaborators as we explored two Japanese aircraft carriers grave sites that were lost during this pivotal battle in World War II, and the final resting places of thousands of sailors, including here Akagi. You can see the chrysanthemum crest here. This aircraft carrier is located in about 3.5 miles of seawater. So deep water archaeology, challenging in many ways to execute, and pulling these images back, not just for public interpretation and dissemination, but doing it live with high definition, real-time video that's able to be streamed across the world, and connecting with our Japanese colleagues real time and discussing not just what we were seeing and what's there, but as you can see, this was a concurrent event that we had at NOAA's headquarters at the Exploration Command Center, watching live video with members from the Japanese embassy, archaeologists on the project from the U.S. Naval History and Heritage Command, from Search Incorporated, and others, including NOAA Ocean Exploration. The emotion is real in these kinds of explorations, the connection is real. And it makes a mark. And over 100 scientists ashore were tuning in from all around the world doing this with us, as we uncovered some of the first archaeological interpretation and full documentation of these particular aircraft carriers in this battle. There's a couple significant sites yet to be found from the Battle of Midway, but the work that we're able to do and it's building for an exciting portfolio of archaeological and public interpretation products out of it is quite exciting. So certainly one from recent past that I'd like to share. And while we did survey Akagi and Kaga, we also returned to the USS Yorktown, discovered in 1985 by Dr. Robert Ballard. You can see here, this is a deck winch mount just after the island on the aircraft carrier Yorktown. Incredibly sad things happened here on this deck many years ago, and to pull back updated images of Yorktown and take a longer, over a 12-hour remotely operated vehicle dive, to take that time to document these places in high definition, to produce 3D photometric models, to gather video annotations from experts that we're working with was incredible. So great one to highlight.
Fantastic. Thank you for highlighting those incredibly important expeditions and explorations. I was going to ask you both a question about agency and action and why this work is so important. I think you guys covered it pretty well in what you just shared. But is there anything more that you might say about why you feel the work that you do is so essential and so important?
Yeah.
Either or.
I can start and then hand it over to Phil. As Phil was mentioning, there's something tremendously important about the tangibility of history, of really bringing it closer to us. And when I think about agency, there are classes within anthropology that center on defining agency as like a theoretical framework. And I think what feels more important and most important for me is really thinking about how we can be active in our engagement with the environment around us and the histories that are held in our environment. So I think about, these waterways and what it means to be an active participant in the stewardship of our waterways, and thinking about how that holds both our understanding of stewarding this history, but also stewarding the water itself, So much of what I find fascinating about, diving with a purpose is that as an organization, we've really decided to be agents and active participants in the stewardship of African diasporic, African descendant histories, and really taking it upon ourselves to say, no, this is the work that we all do as community. And bringing that history, once again, that closeness, that intimacy, allows us to really see how it connects us to the past and how the past shapes our present moment.
I really like that, Ayana, and I appreciated the chats with you earlier on a point you made that was so well taken about choice, right? And how agency in an anthropological definition really highlights the effect of choices that we make as individuals, as families, as communities, right? On different levels of social and cultural organization have on human experience trajectory, right? And what is connecting us. And it's hard to argue, with the claim that for the vast majority of human existence, we have chosen to inhabit, recreate, extract from, and in some cases heal riverine and marine bodies of water and coastal areas. That is where our species has really connected since the beginning. And the archaeological record is a way uncover that agency, those choices that we've made to live by rivers, the material, cultural, and archaeological evidence that we've left behind in these places are incredibly valuable and important to our story. And this connection is the overarching component of agency for me, and it spans interwoven dialogues that are oftentimes difficult to understand in other means and media and ways. So I love it. I love the idea of agency and the connections that our choices to be near water have made.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate those words. Thank you guys for that. Lightening up the conversation just a little bit, and thinking a little bit about the two of you and what captivated you to do what you do, either as a young person or maybe an aha moment. Maybe Ayana, you first.
Sure. So I grew up in Miami, Florida. So I grew up surrounded by water. And I have very vivid memories of my grandmother and my mom, us being at Crandon Park, which is a historically Black beach in South Florida, and always being surrounded by water, snorkeling, but never diving in it, never really seeing and knowing about the histories held in its depths. So much of what I knew about water and my relationship to water was from the shorelines, from the shoals, you know? So it really was in 2015, once again, when Diving with a Purpose reached out to Justin and I, that really made me think about, wow, how, like, what's really possible here? And even then, when Jay Hagler, who's one of the board members for Diving with a Purpose, was like, you know, Ayana, there are two people in this world. There are people who are divers, and then there are people who are going to become divers. When he said that to me, I was like, I am not going to become a diver. And I think part of it is, once again, so much work has been done on the power of representation. I had not seen images of many Black people, people of African descent, doing maritime archaeology. Absolutely not. The numbers are horrific. Less than 1% of practicing archaeologists are people of African descent. We know these things. But even within the kind of realm of recreational scuba diving, that also, there is not a lot of representation of people of color. So it was not something that I saw. And it was really only until I was in St. Croix with Diving with a Purpose and the Smithsonian, trying to work on this grand idea we had between our three organizations to do both a maritime and terrestrial community-rooted program, archaeology program, that Justin, who had begun his training with Jay, did his first ocean dive. And Justin came back from that first dive. And I have known Justin since 2011. He's one of my oldest friends. And I swear I'd never seen a smile on his face so large. And it was literally in that moment I was like, all right, I have to see what this is. Like, what exactly is happening? You know, what's all the excitement about? Come on, do you see this? It's ridiculous. So when that took place, I was like, okay, we're going to do it. And training for me was not, you know, in the clear, pristine waters of St. Croix. I began my training actually in Lake Travis in Austin, Texas. Which is green and murky, and you could see maybe 6 feet in front of you, and there are fish that like to nibble on your ears. But my first ocean dive in St. Croix, on the water surrounding St. Croix, was life-changing. It was absolutely life-changing. And it's really what let me know, okay, I really want to see what's possible here in a myriad of ways, not only just around the history that's held there, but really thinking about how we can connect people to these histories and get more folks in the water.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you, Ayana.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil, before we get to you, just a reminder to our audience, feel free to drop some questions in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. But Phil, wondering about your inspiration and aha moment.
Well, certainly it was a slow burn, right? With just incredible opportunities in different spaces. Growing up in the West Coast, always being around water, much like Ayana, that sort of immersive regularity with the ocean was a big part of my continued interest to stay by it, near it, in it, under it. But I can say, there was a really transformative period, and oftentimes what I think of as a unique place, and that was at a golf course. One of the best jobs I had as a kid, one of the best jobs I've ever had was in outside services at a golf course near my home when I was in high school, parking golf carts and cleaning golf clubs. And, granted, you butter up the golfers, right? You get a few bucks, and learning about all of their individual professional aspirations, presence, interests was always fun. You talked to a lot of people, and one was Dr. Jim Allen, who was an archaeologist for a private cultural resource firm, but also was an assistant professor at St. Mary's College of California. He saw my interest. We kept talking and talking and talking, and he invited me to his college courses that he was teaching when I was in high school. And I would almost sort of audit these classes, hanging out in the background, learning, listening, not asking too many questions, but developing the list, right? And that was, I can never thank him enough for that. It put me on this path. I just became sort of hyper focused on some of those early experiences, right? And watching what some of my peers were doing now, great friends, back when I was in high school, and later graduated from St. Mary's under his tutelage and mentorship. So you never know where life-changing and transformative conversations can happen. For me, it was on a golf course, cleaning golf clubs, and good part of my story, I think.
Right. Never know who you're going to meet, who's going to change your life, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, here's a good meaty question for you guys. When we think about the exploration that you've both been doing, there's a lot of different tools that are involved in marine archaeology. Let's consider some of the tools that you guys have used and use on a regular basis in the places that you explore. Ayana, why don't we start with you with that one?
Yeah, certainly. So when I think about tools, I actually think to the very basics as well. So I think about scuba itself, which is an acronym for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. And just being able to actually acclimate to your body underwater, having your vest, having your first stage or second stage regulator in your mouth, your mask, your dive computer, like these kind of core technological elements that allow us as humans to be able to breathe, balance, be underwater. And this image of me is actually from one of my very first survey works with Diving with a Purpose, one of my very first training sessions with them, working with NOAA. And so a huge shout out to Brenda Hartmeyer and Matthew Lawrence, who are the key collaborators for that program with Diving with a Purpose. And what you're seeing me doing was actually measuring an object of interest that was likely pertaining to a ship that summer, probably the Hannah and Belle, if I'm remembering correctly. And if you can imagine, doing survey work underwater, similarly to doing survey work on land, but then having to take all these tools down there with you. So you saw me writing underwater with my Mylar paper and my graphite pencil. You saw a kind of netting that I was held at my side, which contained like my clipboard in it. It contained a measuring stick as well. And then for Diving with a Purpose, our primary sort of goal is to provide maps that support NOAA NOAA and the National Park Service with their ongoing stewardship efforts of being able to see how these wreck sites shift and change over time. And this is a fantastic image that we have of the Tuskegee Airmen plane wreck that is part of that fantastic project that Wayne Lasardi is doing. But just to shout out again, the kind of main programming and technique that Diving with a Purpose engages with are varying kind of measurement tools. So we use trilateration. We're also training our advocates to engage more with photogrammetry because it's becoming a quicker, more efficient way to actually create a series of underwater photographs that become a mosaic that could then actually.
Oh my God, hey buddy.
Oh, I hear Phil's sweet child coming in the background. Yes, the babies.
That's great.
We love that life still happens. And I think that that's
Yes.
also really important as well. It's like Phil and I are both maritime archaeologists and have such full lives, even outside of the work that we're doing as well. But yeah, so those are just a couple of the tools that we're using. I'll pass it on over to Phil to also talk about the fantastic technology that NOAA's been engaged with for some of their awesome projects.
Thanks, Ayana. Yeah, that was a great overview. And marine archaeology, right, has been around for a while, but scuba in its inception was a big part of enabling scientists to really pull terrestrial land-based archaeologists, right, to start entering the water on a much more accessible scale, right? Scuba was incredibly important, and it still is. The vast majority of work in our field is being executed on scuba. There are tools at Ocean Exploration that we have been perfecting over the years with partners and community members, including remotely operated vehicles, which are underwater robots, right, that are tethered to the surface. You can see here an ROV off of NOAA's ship Okeanos Explorer, delicately handling artifacts in a very rare artifact recovery mission. We rarely do this, but only in extreme permitted, regulated circumstances where conservation and plans for material culture are really well thought out and well funded in advance. It's really tricky navigating in deep waters, but expert piloting, expert navigation, and tools and assets aboard ship, including dynamic positioning systems and advanced GPS, global positioning systems, can keep pilots and crews on stage to be able to, pick up a glass bottle with a manipulator arm, thousands of feet away from where the pilot is standing or sitting in a control room. So other technologies we're using to investigate cultural heritage include autonomous underwater vehicles, right? These are underwater devices that can map or explore on their own, whether it's predefined grids or whether it's exploration on its own. So if we can pull up that machine learning slide, thanks so much to a friend and colleague, Dr. Katie Skinner from University of Michigan. Machine learning, she's been able to incorporate into the algorithm for an autonomous underwater vehicle to actually be able to detect in real time underwater cultural heritage and shipwreck sites in the Great Lakes, where imagine this largely autonomous vehicle that's collecting sonar data can actually stop, hit the brakes as it's mowing the lawn, right? Mapping the seafloor if it senses something that fits a certain size, dimension, that may correspond to one of the known of many hundreds and thousands of training data. What we've packed into this machine to say, hey, these are examples of what these sites could look like in the data. If you see something while you're collecting the data, take another pass, right? Or identify it for us so we can pick it out of the data itself later. So when we think about the efforts to map the ocean, it's immense, it's daunting, it's inspiring, right? In every sense of those words. And there's a lot to do, right? So
there's an awful lot to do.
These technologies on the open ocean scale are always being developed, advanced, and communities like underwater archaeology and maritime heritage are just one of the many users and developers of ocean science technology. But together, right, including this laser scanning image, we're all benefiting from increased marine technology that's allowing us to understand more about the ocean.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Phil, maybe we can pull up a short clip from the Battle of Midway, where we've got the ROV down there taking a close look, and just consider general accessibility. And hopefully we won't get seasick when we watch this video.
I know. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. After 12 hours of on the edge of your seat kind of exploration here, this is 3.5 miles below the surface, right? I mean, that's incredible. This is live streamed around the world. We're seeing it in Washington, D.C. on a 2-second delay, maybe less than that, to what the shipboard scientists are seeing, to what our colleagues in Japan are seeing. That's accessibility. And that wasn't accessible 10 years ago. Dr. Ballard was a big push in this department of telepresence-enabled exploration. Ocean exploration is a big proponent of this. All of our ROV cruises aboard NOAA ship Okeanos Explorer incorporate this technology. And the idea is, there's only 40, 50 people on the ship, right? I mean, we want live interactions where we can pull not just inquisitions and questions from the professional audience, but more importantly, right, we want the public to be able to be a part of this as scientists ashore, as bringing agency, right, to citizen science. And it's deep water, it's inaccessible for most, but thanks to this telepresence idea, it's accessible to everybody. And reaching those audiences is a key part of communicating messaging and ultimately sort of recounting this human experience and understanding of the ocean together. Mm-hmm. And the emphasis is there, is together, is doing this as one. So yeah, great to share.
Thank you so much. We do have a question from an audience member, but Phil, before we get to that, can you answer that poll question that came up a lot earlier about what was hanging off the stern of that wreck? Maybe we can pull that back up with a short video and you can tell us which answer is correct.
Sure thing. Well, if you answered C, rust, you're right on there. Rusticles. Perhaps most famous on the Titanic, but also Bismarck and many other deep water shipwrecks. They're actually microbial, really small microbiome communities that feed off of ferrous materials, iron, from the ship, and they form and grow into these icicle-shaped rusticles. So the answer is rust, C.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Looks like some folks got it right and some folks were perplexed. When I first looked at it, they definitely look like orange sponges. So rusticles was a new word for me from a couple of years ago. So we do have a question from a person in our audience who's asked about changing opinions over time about removing artifacts versus leaving them where they are. And Ayana, I'm really curious your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think my perspective, which really centers once again on the kind of equilibrium that DWP has with its oceanic conservation programming and its maritime heritage conservation programming, is the intersection of environmental conservation and cultural preservation. And just as Phil was pointing us towards these rusticles in this microbiome, so many of these heritage sites, especially submerged vessels or airplanes, have become homes to hundreds of thousands of oceanic organisms. So really being able to think about how the removal of particular artifacts from this site or disruptions to those home spaces is like one specific way to think about it. And for a lot of the work that we do in Diving with a Purpose, not only are we mapping and surveying a wreck site, we're also documenting coral populations, fish population around these sites, the environmental evaluation of these wreck sites as well, to make sure that that link between the environment and cultural preservation are intact and in balance with one another. And I think in addition to that, these sites are history for everyone. And the idea of removing artifacts from these in situ spaces, so removing them from the historical context in which they were in which they became a part of the archaeological record, means that we no longer have access to that data, that information, that history. And then the last thing that I'll say on that is the immense amount of conservation work that is necessary to the preservation of objects, artifacts, once they're removed from the ocean, from these watery depths as well. So many times you will hear people who said they've taken this or they've taken that from a site. They have this anchor, this metal fragment, and it's crumbling in a year time because there's no conservation of these particular artifacts as well. Lost pieces of history. So many of the kind of smoke and gun, elements that we have to name ships, for instance, like a bell, the hope that you can get the bell of a ship or the mast of a ship that really can tell you what it is that you're looking at. Those are the most desired objects from recreational divers, from salvagers as well. And with the removal of these artifacts, we lose that history. We lose the story. So.
Yeah, and every once in a while, it makes sense. Like the video that Phil was speaking to earlier, which is from the Nautilus from Ocean Exploration Trust, where they were suction cupping the medicine bottle and bringing it into the box. I mean, there's a specific reason for collecting that specific piece, right? Yes. To understand more about what was going on with that particular ship. Mm-hmm. So, Phil, maybe
when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, I wonder what kind of testing, like chemical analysis they could do to even look to see what kind of formulas were inside. So exciting. Yeah.
Phil, maybe you can speak to that a little bit. When we collect an artifact like that from any of our exploration vessels, what's the purpose behind that?
Well, it has to be a good one, right? Because as Ayana said, once those materials are removed from a site, its provenience is gone, right? We don't know anymore really where it come from or where it was on the site unless it's properly documented. In most cases these days, it is, but the responsibility ethically as archaeologists and as cultural heritage stewards changes incredibly when items are removed from the bottom. The second they're lifted, an obligation begins to curate and preserve this item, this object, whether it's an anchor or a medicine bottle, forever, right? That's a tough deal, and guaranteeing that these artifacts that are recovered have lifelong preservation plans, not just the short term, but really long-term plans on how they're going to be shared with the public is of primary importance. So it really doesn't happen all that often. Occasionally there may be diagnostic artifacts of a ship type or of an important story, but all of those elements of conservation and preservation plans are well established before anything is moved. And I would say the vast majority of archaeological work these days underwater is in situ preservation, using the technologies that we have, photogrammetric survey, right, rapid access monitoring tools, high resolution LiDAR scans, right? There's ways that we can bring this technology and bring these sites to the public eye beyond an artifact in the case. Sometimes there's rare cases, those are still important, but with where tech is going now, it's the interpretive power of leaving things in place and documenting in places is immense.
Are so detailed and so crisp. You can see so much between these photogrammetry images and the ROV images, and marrying those up together, you can see things like we've never been able to see them before.
Absolutely. And the time required, just today, just before we were able to log on here, supporting the NOAA diving program and the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and documenting 4 shipwrecks lost off of here, up here in the Great Lakes, local to my home in northern Michigan. 4 dives, 4 ships, and be able to be here with Ayana, Susan, and yourself. And we fully documented through high definition video and still imagery to collect 3D photo models of these places. So, and everything is left in place for others to enjoy and recreate and explore, right? So we can quickly document these places and share it with the public while not disturbing anything. And that's definitely the preference for our discipline going forward.
Right. Thank you guys for such a terrific and comprehensive answer to that question. Also, maybe to lighten things up or kind of switch gears just a little bit, thinking about your professions and the experiences that you've had, can you think about maybe one of your most exciting or bizarre or inspiring experiences you've had in your maritime heritage careers thus far? You're both quite young, but I think you both have probably had some pretty powerful experiences. Ayana, maybe you first?
Yeah, I think perhaps I'll point towards my very first dive training program with Diving with a Purpose in I think it was the summer of 2017 or 2016. And what I enjoyed so much about that particular June is that my dive buddy was a brilliant woman who was 80 years old. Like, there is a way that that experience was so intergenerational that it felt like it was a history for all in a lot of ways. So I think just like and this just came up to me because I know we didn't speak about it earlier, but it's definitely one of the most aha and exciting moments for me. And then I know I also talked earlier about diving with Catilda wreck site as well, which was transformative. I think, to really be able to be submerged in the actual hull of a ship that didn't carry my ancestors across the Atlantic, but would have very likely been in similar conditions, is transformative in ways that I oftentimes don't have words to describe, except like the kind of deep breath moments that I take before sharing it. But those feel like two of the most, two of the most this will always come to mind moments.
Yeah. Beautiful. How about you, Phil?
This was, I didn't have a great answer for this. I thought about this question over and over again. And if there's any friends from the Great Lakes listening, they've heard me tell the story because I tell it often. but it has nothing to do with archaeology. It has everything to do really with teamwork and the experience of working offshore, right? And together being able to conduct not just the archaeology, but marine operations, running shifts, hydrographic survey, geophysical survey, right? This is a great team here. United States Coast Guard hosted us for a week or so, documenting deep water shipwrecks up here in the Great Lakes to inform mooring buoy locations and to provide better access for the public to these deep water places. Ocean Exploration Trust is here, Cardinal Point Captains, Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, United States Coast Guard. And the survey, well, a survey that helped inform this project was executed off the research vessel Laurentian, and takes a relatively small crew to run 24-hour ops. It's a great boat up here, run by our partners at the NOAA Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab. And I remember one evening I had the night shift running a survey with some colleagues there where every 12 hours we would switch shift, right? And there was a captain, a mate, and a surveyor. And I was a surveyor, and the mate comes down and he says, "Phil, do you want some cookies?" I said, "What?" It's like 2 a.m. This is what you do in the middle of the night, right? You bake cookies. He went and put the cookies in the oven. He came back downstairs where I was working in the survey lab. Next to the survey lab is the engine room. He went into the engine room, ran through a bunch of engine checks, got distracted about something, forgot about the cookies. The smoke alarm goes off in the galley. Cookies are burning. Everybody on that boat, I have not seen a quicker response, call to action. Everybody just fell out of their bunks. People are just, what's going on? And it was intense in the moment, but we got some laughs a couple days later about the cookies, and a dear friend getting distracted in the engine room as the galley smoke alarm was going off, and people thought, what was going loose. So small little moments like that, and working in the ocean and the Great Lakes stick. And there's nothing better than being out there with a team, running survey, running archaeology, being together and working towards a common goal.
It really becomes family on a ship, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you guys for that. I am interested in, and Ayana, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I know you were just down in the Caribbean, but what's up next for the two of you? How about you, Ayana? What are you doing next?
Up next for me. Well, I'm finishing up teaching my quarter at Stanford. We go until like June 7th or something. And I head down to Diving with a Purpose. We're doing our dive training program with a whole new group of advocates working in tandem and partnership with NOAA down in Key Biscayne. So there's excitement for that. That's the second week of June. And then I'll be spending some time down in St. Croix, where I've done terrestrial archaeology for several years now. And we're doing a project with a colleague of mine, Dr. William White from UC Berkeley, with the National Park Service, really doing an ethnographic overview in that space. So those two feel like the most pressing ahead of me. And then I'm really excited to think more deeply about the experiences of divers at these wreck sites and encountering history and thinking about that underwater. So I've recently purchased a lot of underwater communications equipment to actually do interviews with DWP divers this summer. So excited for more of that to take place as well.
Actually interviewing them while they're underwater?
Yeah.
Fun. Very fun. That'll be really interesting.
Yeah.
I want to know more. Definitely.
Yeah. How about you, Phil? Where are you going next?
Well, we're finishing up a project supporting sanctuary efforts up here from an archaeology standpoint, and about 6 weeks, 7 weeks perhaps. There's a team funded by NOAA Ocean Exploration that's being led by Dr. Jason Ropp, Dr. Dom Bush from East Carolina University, and Dr. Caroline Funk from the University of Buffalo. We're heading to Alaska flying to the westernmost city in the United States, the city of Adak Island in the Aleutians, and then steaming another 700 miles or so to the island of Attu, the furthest most western island in the Aleutian island chain, where the only battle in the Second World War occurred on U.S. soil. The team's going to be joined by several native Unungan consultants whose Unungan ancestors call Attu home. And tragically, they've not been allowed to return. There's going to be marine biologists on board analyzing the synthetic aperture sonar data that's being collected by partners at Thayer Mahan, who is towing a synthetic aperture sonar towfish, SAS, called the Min Scout, is going to be towed behind a vessel owned by a private company up in the Alaskan region. So going up there to analyze the first study of this marine battlescape, where many casualties ensued, and together with colleagues from Japan's Apparatus, who specialize in remotely operated vehicle operations and photogrammetry, community leaders essentially in the latter. It's going to be multinational, multicultural group of scientists going out there for better part of a week, but there's 2 to 3 days of transit from Adak to Attu. Really, truly, I mean, it is one of the most remote places on the planet, and arguably some of the most least understood elements of the Second World War. So collecting data, products, and experiences to share with the public under the leadership of Jason, Dom, and Caroline.
That's tremendous. And you'll be mixing the indigenous understanding and experience of the area with the current science and exploration aspects, as I understand.
It's an important part of research going forward. It's an important part of all research, and that's understanding that there are different ways of knowing. There are different knowledge systems, and we, from so many backgrounds, come at existence and human experience from such different lenses, and you can't tell it all with just one single perspective, right? There's a lot of really bad things that happen at this place to Native Unungans, and capturing their voice as a part of this research has been a priority of the project from the beginning. But more importantly, too, right, offering opportunities for students and Native Unungan professionals and consultants to be involved. Anybody that wants to tap into this project, right? Open arms, palms up, palms open, to see what voices are interested in this kind of work, and how we can help promote the stories of the past that are centering around this impactful battle, but it's in a space that's been mastered by Native indigenous communities since time immemorial. So incredible opportunity for multiple ways of knowing to be incorporated in archaeology.
I love that. Open arms, palms up, palms open. That's a beautiful saying. And I think I've got one other question for the two of you that leads beautifully into, before we wrap up with you guys and get into some of the wonderful resources that you've shared with us, and education resources that we have for folks in the classroom. As we were doing our interviewing with experts, and we spoke with your colleague, Justin Dunavan, Ayana, who joined us for last Tuesday's event, and he shared the words that I found were quite powerful when thinking about maritime heritage and marine archaeology: remember, remind, and restore. And in closing out with the two of you, I'd love to hear a little bit about what that means to you in relationship to this discipline. Ayana?
As Phil was sharing this divine work that's happening in Alaska, I think this phrase, what feels so important about it is the kind of key work that archaeology should be taking up, right? That the work that we do is about bringing people closer to these histories, but also allowing people to understand the interconnectedness, right? Of all of us. Like that's really a part of what we need to remember, you know? And this understanding of restoring, part of it is talking about these really hard histories, right? Of removal, of displacement, of violence that have structured so many lives across the United States, specifically in the world. And archaeology has such a key role to play in bringing this history to people that allows for that healing to take place, right? That allows for the kind of restoration when we think about the kind of after the next of sitting in, but also moving through. So it feels like a real call to action for archaeology as a discipline and for archaeologists as practitioners to really stand in the kind of role our work could play um, in imagining our past, present, and future.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ayana. How about you, Phil?
It's hard to say any more than that, to be honest. I mean, that captures my thoughts exactly. We're all trying to understand, right? I mean, that is the inquisitive mind, what it means to be human, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. Archaeology can do that, and Justin's words are brilliantly put, and I love especially the restoration element of this. Right, there is an active healing process that archaeology can bring to stories by providing better understanding of these places and times. This is far from a sterile laboratory objective discipline, right? And this is an emotional journey. This is an anthropological. It's a cultural view into the core of humanity, and we're all trying to figure out what that is. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible way to wrap it up.
Yeah. The two of you are on incredible journeys in your profession to tell these stories. And I've been so inspired just listening to the work that you do and your perspective on the work that you do. It's incredibly powerful. And I thank you for your expertise, for sharing your individual experiences with us tonight. I feel very honored to have you both here this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been fantastic talking with you all.
Great.
Likewise, thanks.
Absolutely. So with that, we're going to bid Phil and Ayana adieu, and we hope our experts' perspectives have shed some terrific light on the incredible work that's being done in this realm and have given you all some great food for thought. Before we get into our resources, just quickly, we'd love to bring back up our Mentimeter and ask you all to participate in a word cloud and share just a couple of words describing what intrigued you most about the conversation this evening with Phil and Ayana. So take a few moments to do that. And while you're doing that, I am going to turn it over to Sarita to share some of those fantastic teaching resources that we have so that you can bring this information alive in the classroom. So Sarita, to you.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks so much. And Ayana and Phil, if you're still there, thank you again for not just sharing the tools and the methods that you use in your career, but then also to really kind of share the humanity that is so core to this field. For sharing your time and your space with us. I was listening to your stories and they were so profound and touching. As an educator, that's if you're an educator or you've ever taught in the classroom, you understand that some of the most impactful and the most exciting things is when you see your kids light up because they've connected with something. Part of that's part of the excitement and makes learning a little easier, but also when they see themselves represented in certain careers, as Dr. Ayana was talking about, it changes the trajectory of how they think and how they really see history. So these resources that we're about to share with you are just, they're not comprehensive in any way. But I know that I've learned so much in such a short time right now, and I want to keep learning. And I know that there was a question about that as well. So if you're an educator or you're just interested in learning this, our team has curated a list of resources that you can dive into. They have a variety of, if we can see our list right here, a variety of things, of anything from videos to images. Some of the videos that I really highlighted here are some of the stuff that Phil was talking about the Battle of Midway. We also have images that you can, image galleries that you can reference.
Sarita?
Yes.
If I could just interrupt you for just a moment, you will need to reshare your screen.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Little tech boo-boo.
Oh, I think it's when I got locked out. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, just hit the present button.
It's not showing up on my screen. Oh, here it is. All right, can you see now?
If you share your screen and hit the present button at the bottom of the StreamYard.
I did.
Yep. Okay, awesome.
Okay. Okay. Get back to my apologies, little tech issues. So if you're looking at some of these sites that we also have lessons and modules, information sheets, and publications that we can go through, presentations, and then also some really cool recent expeditions that you can look up here in these links. Some awesome additional resources are also from Ayana. So if you go to Ayana's site, I got the chance to look at it, and it does have a lot of her research as well as some media and her artwork, references to her art and her publications as well. She does have lots of number of resources for children's books focused on slave ships, relationships with water, and a book celebrating the joy and the talent of 52 Black people from around the world. If you look here, Phil has also shared some of his some videos, one on digital preservation, as well as the Lost Whaler, a 207-year-old whaling ship, and the only whaler known to have gone down in the Gulf of Mexico. This helps us to illuminate the stories of Black and Native American mariners who worked on the vessel. So as a follow-up to this event, we'll be sending you this list within the next few days. I also wanted to share a little bit of, or some of our resources that we have on our NOAA Ocean Exploration site. If you click here, you can look at, first of all, the expeditions. So if you click and boost by topic, this goes for a little bit. Everything is sectioned out for you. You can click on Maritime Heritage. It's just taking a little bit. And anything related to maritime heritage that's an expedition will be on this that we have available. So anything from the Nautilus field season to exploration AUVs, early encounters in Western frontier, you can definitely read a lot of these expeditions that have really looked at maritime heritage sites. One of my favorites that I used to use a lot in class were the multimedia. So you can use these, you can use the video gallery. Again, you can search by topic. We're going to click by maritime heritage. And lots of great videos on the Titanic, different wrecks from World War II, exploration sites, Pearl Harbor, Japanese mini sub. And again, these are really great to play if you have bell ringers or you have work to do. They can do at the beginning or end of class. Some of them are really short, and they can have some quick questions that you can ask them as well. The other one is just looking at images. You hit the image gallery. It'll also take you to, again, your themes, and then looking at multi-beam. We're going back to Maritime Heritage, and it has some really cool pictures, a lot of which you may have seen in our presentation today, but these are downloadable in high res, so you can download them straight onto your sites, put into your PowerPoints, and these are great, again, to show within the classroom. The last part we have is in our science and tech. Ayana and Phil talked a lot about the tools of the trade, and that was one of probably the most exciting things. I know Ayana alluded to it, as the tools are just one part of it in order to tell the history. So we have exploration tools. If you look at the marine archaeology, you can look at the surveys, the magnetometer, photogrammetry, sonar, multi-beam sonar, synthetic aperture sonar. So all of these amazing tools that are really being used to really document and to bring all of this history to all of us. Okay. The last thing, if you want to just check out our normal education themes that we have here, we have about 11 themes, and each of these, I'm going to click on seafloor mapping. So each of these things, once you click in there, we have available lessons usually for middle and high schools. There's fact sheets, exploration notes, about a 9 to 10 minute videos that are specific to the theme that you click on. And then of course the expeditions that are related to the theme, as well as images and videos. So we really try at NOAA Ocean Exploration to give you everything you need to teach the lessons or to become kind of a mini expert yourself. You don't have to have a PhD in mapping to teach these lessons. We give you everything you need so that you can feel confident and so that you can implement them into the classroom. The last part that we have on here, there's educational opportunities, professional development opportunities, and even grant opportunities that will be coming up. I'll talk about the PD opportunity in just a second. The last slide or site that I want to refer you to is the Deep Ocean Education Project. Okay. As you can see here, it's set up very similar to what we have on our NOAA Ocean Exploration site. Excuse me. So this website was launched in 2021. And it's really kind of a hub in collaboration with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. And it features resources from NOAA Ocean Exploration Trust, and the Schmidt Ocean Institute. So this is kind of a go-to all, right? This is great if you're an educator, because if you're finding things, these are probably the best resources that you'll have, especially when looking for ocean exploration materials and even deep ocean exploration materials. You can search by topic. So if you click topic here, you have anything from the Arctic to underwater cultural heritage. You can type in a word, and then you can type in also the resource that you're looking for. If you don't want anything except for the videos, you can click on image or the image gallery or video. If you just want lessons or activities for your students, you can click on student activities. And then also you can choose which organization you want to focus on. If you don't choose an organization, it'll give you everything that's of whatever topic you're looking for and whatever resource type that you're looking for as well. But if you pick one specific organization, it'll give you just the resources from that particular organization. If you go to my account, so this is my particular account, you can set up a free account. So it doesn't cost you anything. You just put in your email, some information, and you're set. So if you need help doing that, all you would need to do is click Need Help, and there's a short video that tells you exactly how to set up your free account. The great part about this, I have two collections. I have Exploring the Deep Ocean with NOAA, the professional development that we had. And then we have a Maritime Heritage and Archaeology list that we're going to be sharing with you as well, in conjunction with the list that we just talked about. If you click here, you can see all of the videos and lessons that pertain to what we were talking about tonight. And the really great part is, as an educator, you can save all of these into a folder, and it'll keep them for you. So you can categorize them and organize them in any which way you want, whether it's by class or by subject, anything that you teach, and it's going to be there for you. So again, a free resource, a free account. And we keep adding to these collections as we keep developing these materials and resources for you, including some maritime heritage lessons that are going to be completed probably within the year. And then hopefully next year, a deep sea dialogue that we'll be doing with an expert on maritime heritage and archaeology. Lastly, if you like to look at live streams from some of the ships that are doing the exploration with ROVs and mapping, if you click on vessels up in this upper right-hand corner here, it'll take you to a site and it'll show you all 3 research vessels. So the Okeanos, the Nautilus, and the Falcor are featured here. When they are live or when they're live streaming, it'll show you, it'll say we're live. You can also, that's really helpful, you can actually see all of the expeditions by month throughout the year. Every time you click, it tells you exactly who's going out. And if you click on this particular link, it'll tell you about the expedition as well. So again, you can see who's at sea and you can see where they're at. Lastly, if you look at our professional developments, we don't have anything available right now, but if you are a fellow educator and if you're excited about learning more about this subject, or even just about why and how we explore, you can join us next fall for one of our professional development workshops that we'll be offering in cooperation with our NOAA Ocean Exploration Alliance partners around the country. At these events, we will walk you through these student lessons, investigations, a variety of resources that we have in greater detail. And if I say so myself, we have a really great time. The teachers love these. So for more information about these events and how to register, we'll be updating in late summer in both the Deep Ocean Education Project website, as well as the NOAA Ocean Exploration web pages. So stay tuned for more. Thanks again for joining us. Back to you, Susan.
Thanks so much for sharing those tremendous resources, Sarita. Looking forward to sharing those with our audience and looking forward to diving into them even deeper myself. This has been an incredible topic to explore, and I personally cannot thank Ayana and Phil enough for joining us tonight. So thank you both again for sharing your expertise with us. And folks, if there are any burning questions that we didn't answer, please feel free to send them to us. You can use the email address oceanexeducation@noaa.gov. It's going across the ticker tape across the bottom. Please feel free to write us there. And we'd also like to thank our team and crew behind the scenes from NOAA Ocean Exploration and also from the University of Rhode Island's Inner Space Center. And for educators, if you need credit hours for tonight's event, please email me at susan.haynes@noaa.gov, also going across the banner across the bottom, and we'll be sure to get a certificate of participation to you. And a huge thanks to all of you for your enthusiastic participation. And I want to pull our word cloud up back on the screen just to take a look at what you all thought of our inspiring chat with Ayana and Phil. I see passionate, absolutely passionate, powerful, slave voyages, which is an exploration in and of itself, cultural connections, understanding, remembrance, and community. Thank you all for dropping your words into the chat. That's really helpful to understand what resonated with you from our conversation. And with that, we're going to close out with this very short, about 30-second humorous clip of a photobomb while exploring the wreck of the tug New Hope in the Gulf of Mexico in 2018. And we hope to see you all at another ocean exploration education event in the near future. But until next time, have a wonderful evening.
Oh, this guy's gonna block my view.
And we just got a sea cucumber.
Yeah, headless chicken monster.
Would that be photobometry?